Hi there, it's me again. Today I'm going to break down a topic that gets talked about a lot but rarely in simple, everyday language. I want to look at what people mean when they talk about the globalists, what the Fabian Society is, and how organisations like the World Economic Forum or WEF, the World Health Organization or WHO, and the EU fit into wider debates about global plans, political influence, and long term global goals. At the end, I'll share my own personal views on how current political decisions might connect to these ideas. But first, let's have a brief overview. So, what do people mean by globalists? Well, in the simplest sense, a globalist is someone who believes countries should work very closely together, economically, politically, and socially. This can include things like international trade agreements, shared rules, standards, and courts, global health organisation, climate agreements, migration frameworks, and such like. Supporters say that this is looking at the bigger picture and makes the world more stable. But critics argue it reduces national control, weakens borders, and shifts power away from voters and towards international institutions and unelected experts. So when people talk about globalists, they're usually referring to rich political leaders, organisations, and businessmen who support international integration. Globalists are also sometimes referred to as elites. This is probably because they are usually wealthy and at the top of large organisations or business empires. Let's now talk about the Fabian Society, a British political organisation founded in 1884. Its core idea is gradual, step-by-step social reform rather than revolution. It played a major role in shaping the early Labour Party. Key beliefs include expanding the welfare state, reducing inequality, using government policy to shape society, and long-term planning rather than sudden change. One of the most talked about parts of Fabian history is their old emblem, a wolf dressed in a sheep's fleece. It was used in the early 20th century, was meant to symbolise their strategy of gradualism, changing society slowly from within existing institutions rather than through open revolution. Supporters saw it as a clever political symbolism. Critics saw it as proof that the Fabians wanted to reshape society quietly without the public fully noticing. A wolf in sheep's clothing. The symbol was eventually dropped, but it remains a major talking point for people who believe the Fabians had, or still have, a hidden agenda. The Fabians aren't a secret society and they publish their work openly, but their influence on political institutions, especially through think tanks, academia and policy writing, gives them a long-term presence in British politics. And because they favour slow incremental change, some people link Fabianism to broader globalist ideas about long-term social engineering or managed social transformation. George Orwell, the author of 1984, which depicted a terrifying dystopian Big Brother future, lived in the same political circles as many Fabians. He debated with them, and he strongly disagreed with their more top-down, technocratic ideas about reshaping society. That's why some people today see a connection between the Fabian vision of slow, managed social change and the world Orwell warned about in 1984. Orwell never said it was specifically about the Fabian views, but it was an obvious warning about any system that was authoritarian, controlling, and obsessed with managing people's lives from above. Most Labour Prime Ministers and many Labour MPs are members of the Fabian Society. Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are members. Sadiq Khan, London's mayor, holds the position of Vice President. So where do the WEF, WHO and the European Union fit into all this? Well, the World Economic Forum brings together political leaders, CEOs, businessmen, academics and activists to discuss global issues. Supporters say it's just a networking and policy discussion platform. But critics argue it gives unelected elites too much influence over national policy and that much of their business is conducted behind closed doors, which may indicate a lack of democratic oversight, too much concentration of power among unelected elites, and decisions affecting the public being made without public input or knowledge. The World Health Organization coordinates global health responses. Supporters say it's essential for pandemics and disease control. It played a large part in the recent COVID restrictions. Critics say it can pressure countries into adopting policies they didn't vote for, and that it centralises health decision making. The EU, or the European Union, is a political and economic union of European countries. Supporters say it promotes peace, trade and shared standards. Critics argue it reduces national sovereignty and creates a powerful bureaucracy that voters can't easily control. The UK voted to leave the EU, but many ties still remain. Across all three organisations, supporters claim the common theme is international cooperation, which some see as necessary. Critics, however, see these organisations as steps towards a centralised global system of power and control by unelected globalist elites. The Great Reset is an actual initiative launched by the WEF in 2020. Its stated aim is to rethink the global economy after COVID-19, focusing on sustainability, digital transformation and reducing inequality. Supporters say it's about modernising the economy, but critics argue it could lead to more corporate influence, more digital surveillance and less individual freedom, and that it's a shift towards technocratic governance. Some even claim it's a plan for a new world order. So where does the Labour Party fit into all this? Well, the Labour Party has long-standing connections with the Fabian Society, international cooperation movements, pro-EU positions and global governance frameworks. Labour governments typically support stronger ties with international institutions, multilateral agreements, global climate commitments, international human rights frameworks and managed migration policies. Supporters see this as modern and compassionate. Critics see it as aligning with globalist ideology, undemocratic decision making and policies resulting in a reduction of national control. So now that we've looked at the ideas behind globalism, the history of the Fabian Society and the role of organisations like the WEF, WHO and the EU, it's worth bringing this back now to the UK and what's been happening here over the last year. A lot of recent political decisions have involved some level of international negotiation. For example, the UK has continued working within global climate frameworks, taken part in WHO-led health planning, and engaged in international discussions on digital regulation and AI safety. And these are all areas where countries coordinate because the issues cross borders and governments argue that shared rules make things more stable and predictable. We've also seen diplomatic activity that reflects the UK's position in a globalised world, such as high-level visits to China, negotiations over the Chagos Islands, and ongoing debates about foreign influence and national security, including the proposed expansion of the Chinese embassy in London. These decisions are usually explained in terms of diplomacy, trade, security, or legal obligations, and different people interpret them in different ways depending on their political perspective. Some see these moves as practical in a connected world. Others see them as signs that international institutions and global networks have too much influence over national policy. And that's really where the debate sits today, between cooperation and sovereignty, and between global frameworks and domestic control. So how do I see it? Well, after looking at all of this, the history, the institutions, the recent decisions, whether it's global health rules, climate commitments, digital regulation, or diplomatic relationships with major powers, a lot of what happens in British politics today is shaped by frameworks and agreements that sit above any single government. Some people see that as a positive. They argue that the world is too interconnected for countries to act alone anymore, and that cooperation is the only way to deal with global challenges. But others look at the same decisions and they see something very different. A steady shift of power away from voters and towards international bodies, think tanks and networks that most people never got to vote for or hold accountable. They see this as a shift away from democratic control, and it helps explain why certain policies keep moving in the same direction, no matter who we vote in, leading some critics to describe Labour, the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats as a uni-party. UK politics today isn't just shaped by what happens in Westminster. In my view, it's also shaped by long-term ideas, international networks, institutions that operate far beyond our borders and control. The more aware people are of how decisions are influenced, the better equipped we will all be to question them. But how much control do we want to hand over to global frameworks? When I look at some of Labour's recent decisions, the Chagos Islands negotiations, the agreement from mega Chinese embassy in London, Starmer's high-profile visits to China, his growing alignment with the EU, what appears to be non-action over open borders, ever-increasing surveillance cameras and the possibility of digital ID and control, it seems to me that Labour are comfortable handing over far too much. And it includes areas of great importance that affect national security, sovereignty and democratic control. I'm genuinely worried about the future of England and the UK if this continues. And that's why I support Advance UK. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please remember that there are lots of good people fighting for our country. The Great British National Strike is one movement trying to bring people together and make our voices heard. It starts this coming Monday, the 2nd of February, so stock your cupboards up this weekend. And if you don't like the way things are going, please join in. I truly hope and believe that in the end, good will triumph, so please don't worry. Do what you can. And remember, you're not alone. Bye for now.